I've yet to meet a child who enjoys misbehaving, or rather I see a child who's working to communicate a message about an unmet need in increasingly desperate and extreme ways. So again, it's that taking that perspective, thinking about where that person is at. Okay, I'll talk louder. Thanks, Bron. Clear the next slide. Okay, who's heard of the term positive behaviour support? Yep. It's a well-coined phrase, and I'm not going to give you a lecture about what positive behaviour support is or anything like that. That would be really dry. But really just to say, positive behaviour support is an approach that's being well used now in terms of supporting really complex and challenging situations. It's a framework, it's a way of looking at things. It's also exactly what we've been talking about today so far. It really encompasses it. So I'm just going to talk about some of the key elements of positive behaviour support that are consistent with what we've talked about today. And I guess that question, how do you know what's a good positive behaviour support process? The reason I'm flagging this is because you will hear this term used. You'll hear it used by people who are offering services in the community that you may access at times, and it is useful to have an understanding of what it's about, because it is one of the best practice ways of approaching, and it's one of the most respectful ways we as families and people who are, siblings or have family members with a disability, it's one of the most respectful ways we can be part of a process of supporting a person. And how do we know that we're actually receiving that kind of support? There's a few key markers, and in a minute I'm going to ask Jackie for some of her reflections of how you can actually shape practitioners or people you're working with to work in this way. But one of the main things here is it's about partnership and collaboration. That's what I mean by that. What we're talking about there is the traditional approach, I think, historically of some therapeutic interventions has been that you hire the expert. The expert comes in. It's a bit of the medical model. They come in, they do an assessment, they tell you what needs to happen, and then there's that process of checking. So have you done your homework? Have you done what you needed to do? Did you do that? Okay, you need to do this differently. There's that expert coming in and telling you what you need to do. What we do know, and it's in the literature too, and from the experiences of talking with families, is often families can feel quite disempowered by that process. Perhaps you've had some experiences like that yourself as well. What we actually understand is more important is that you need to feel as part of the team. You need to feel like your voice and your expertise as a family member is front and centre. Otherwise, how the heck are you going to be able to implement anything that's going to improve the situation? So we've understood that for a while, Deb and I and our colleagues, that really if we want to see lasting improvements in people's behaviour and their quality of life, and we know that means their needs need to be met, if we're going to see that, it has to make sense. Okay, it has to make sense for the family and the people who are in that person's life all the time. So we talk about there the importance of a shared understanding as to why the behaviour is occurring, what needs that may be telling us are not being met, and generally also what are the broader unmet needs for that person and how could they be addressed. So that's, when we're talking about positive behaviour support, we're talking about a respectful, family and person-centred approach, which is a sharing of expertise. You as the expert in terms of your knowledge and relationship with the family member, and the professional or other support person coming in with their specific expertise. And sure, they do have expertise to share, but it needs to make sense in your context, in your life and the life of the person that you love and your family member. So it's translating that. So positive behaviour support is about doing that. It's about translating some of the principles we understand of why behaviour might occur into an everyday language and approach that works for families. The other part of that is it's strengths-based. So it's really about working from the strengths of the person, trying to understand, when the person's at their best, what does that look like? But also you, in terms of how you're going, your family and the other people in your person's life, when are you at your best? What are your strengths? What are you really good at? How can you translate some of that into so that it's working for you? So this approach is about harnessing that through this partnership. Just a very quick snippet. I had the privilege of working with a family, and this parent had been in a very capable position, had been doing an excellent job as a manager in a workplace. They had a child with autism and they were finding it very challenging, and their confidence was being really challenged by the whole experience. Through the process of conversation, one of the things we talked about was how could they grab and harness some of those strengths and skills they naturally had that they applied in the workplace and bring it into their parenting journey, which they did do, and they felt a lot more empowered, and they got some support to help them do that. So that's an example of, really looking at how do you focus on working not from our places where we feel really weak and we're in the red zone ourselves and we're feeling most compromised, but actually looking at when is it at its best and what supports and scaffolding do we need to help that work. So again, it's about focusing on the environment around the person and thinking about what are all the different things that will make a difference and help us as family members and help our loved one as well. And ultimately, this approach is about knowing the person well. What that means then is that we're not going in there offering strategies and solutions which are based on the current practice or best knowledge or whatever's the latest trend in the literature. It's actually about what do we know about our person and okay, what do we know about what the behaviour might be telling us, but more broadly than that, what do we actually understand about what their general needs are? So interaction, what's their day-to-day life looking like? What kind of connections and relationships are they having and enjoying? How well is that working? What's their engagement like in the community? Although looking at things broadly and thinking about how can we support their needs to be met, which also means we often need to look at our own needs as family members too, in terms of meeting some of those needs to ourselves, so we can then better support our loved one too. And I think it's about staying curious. Positive behaviour support is really about having that magnifying glass out, staying curious and staying neutral. So it's questioning assumptions. We've talked a lot today, I think, in so many examples about the assumptions that we all make. I really like that example of, Eli at the basketball court, and some of the assumptions were being made, that maybe he didn't like being there. Well, that wasn't it at all. He actually really did want to be there so much he wanted to be involved and be part of it. So this approach is about staying a little neutral. It's okay, we won't always get it right. We will make assumptions. It's natural that we do that. But it's being prepared to then start again and think, okay, so what else do we need to know? What else do we need to understand to get the supports right? And who else might need to be involved in that as well? I think there's some of the key things I'd say around when you're talking about this approach. It is about that collaborative sharing of expertise approach, staying curious and really focusing on the needs versus just going in with a strategic approach. And Jackie, can I ask just for some reflections from you in terms of what advice you give, I guess, as a family member in terms of how you might influence or shape other people to work in a way like this that's most helpful to you as a family member?
Yeah, I think just through side by side we've helped families, Bron and I have helped some families to write their own behaviour support plans, and what's been really interesting about that is that the first step of just sitting down and listening to what families know about their son or daughter is so powerful. There's a young man that we've been supporting he's been in 12 schools, and he spent the last 3 months of school in time out, having recess at different times to his peers, and it was all not so great. And And then we were looking at how he could maybe have some work after school, because he loves shredding paper. And we just sat down and listened to his mum and said, well, what does he need to make this work? And what she actually knew was that he had very high needs for interaction. So at the workplace, what was most important is that when he went in, everyone said hello to him and hi and how are you, and spoke to him for a couple of minutes. And actually, it's all gone pretty smoothly. There's been a couple of bumpy days, but that place is now paying him. It started as a voluntary job, but now they're paying him for the work that he does because he does it so well. So I guess that would be the main thing, is starting off with families and what we already know, and that's the foundation. And then we can have some conversations and shape that. And it's been really good for me to learn more about the kinds of things Craig and Debbie are talking about today. And as we become more aware of that stuff, we can find a way forward. But it's very much a journey, right? It's not like here's the plan, here's the answer. You kind of have to have some theories and try some things out, and it might take some time to figure out what the final answer is. But as long as that happens in close relationship between professionals and families, that's probably the most important thing.
Okay. Thanks, Jackie. I'm going to keep moving quite quickly now. Can we just... Yep, thanks. So I'm going to talk very briefly about behaviour support plans, behaviour management plans. I think just to note a couple of things. One is, when we hear this term behaviour management plan quite a lot, and often it's put out there as something that's going to really tell us exactly what we need to do to solve the problem. So it can be quite strategy focused, if you like. Often what we find too, I would actually ask you just quickly, where do you think most of the energy goes, or most of the focus is, in terms of the zones here in a traditional behaviour management plan? Yeah? Yep. And if you think about that, is that where you want to throw all your energy and strategies and efforts into? You want to put it here, don't you? So that's the important thing here. When you're thinking about any support plan, it's how is it actually helping you to understand how to support a person's needs to be met, versus just focusing on the behaviour. Because remember, really here, we're about helping a person calm down and regulate as quickly again as possible, so then we can start to put more effort into helping them just to, access the community, have a good quality of life and all of those things, and have their needs met. So that's probably one of the takeaways there. Can I just quickly ask Jodie and Maggie, just perhaps if you could share, I guess, some of your reflections around how your experience with behaviour support plans has helped you in terms of meeting, knowing how to and being able to keep an ongoing focus on meeting the needs of your children.
So Jamie's school came to me with a behaviour support plan that was all in the red, and then I went in the red. So we had a good discussion about the green zone and what he needs at school, because he needs it at home. He needs it throughout the whole day. He doesn't just have needs that are met at home. He needs them throughout the day, like the sensory, his communication, everything needs to happen throughout the whole day. So we had a discussion about how we could make that happen and how it would look like in the school. And there are some days that he's come home and I can see he's really close to that red zone, and I just need to have a quick word back with the teacher. So it's about that partnership and collaboration, did something not go right at school? What was their change of plan? Was he prepared? Did you give him enough time to process? So we have a really good system where I can just ask her those kind of questions and she will get back to you. And usually it's something, it seems small, but it's made a big impact on him, and she is really good about apologising if she's missed something, and she takes accountability for, that was our fault. We did something and we didn't prepare him. And so we have we have good days and bad days, but generally we have more green days, which is great. And also the support plan wasn't just about Jamie getting support, because I felt like I was the person doing everything, and that doesn't work. you'll just burn yourself out. So it was also about me feeling supported. So that was including my other children. Go and have a chat to your brother if that's what he needs, because mummy's busy making supper right now, and I can't do that 24/7. So it's bringing other people in, and so that you're not alone, so that you're supported, because it's not just about your child being supported. As a parent, you need to be supported too.
For us, it's been an amazing tool. We have focused on, obviously, the green zone, that's the bulk of it, and what things look like when Ayana's happy, when she's supported, when she's got engaged in activities, meaningful relationships, she's got predictability, when she's feeling loved and safe, and if she's not, and she's got her behaviours, then it's a tool for us to go back and take responsibility for that. It's not all Ayana's fault, it's with the other people around her and something's going on in the environment, what wasn't set up in the plan. So it's been an amazing tool for us. We've also been aware that we have to adapt it as time goes by, because, Ayana changes, the environment changes, and we do that by upskilling ourselves with, collaborating with the teachers, what's working well, what's not, educating ourselves with workshops, and having that balance and having the confidence that we know our child best and we are good advocates for our children, we live with them, and having that trust in ourselves as family advocates, all that together has made a great plan for Ayana and for our family. It's had benefits all over our family. The behaviour reduces dramatically, so, yeah.
Thanks, Jodie and Maggie. Can we just have the next slide? So I guess what we're also hearing there is the importance of thinking about who is the support plan for. Okay, so just reflecting on that. It's not necessarily for our loved one, is it? For the person with a disability that we're supporting or is in our family. It's actually for the people around them. And that's it. That's the important focus here, I think. It's around how do we make sure that support plan actually meets that purpose of supporting the people around a person so that they are best able to meet that person's needs, but in the process also be reflective of what their needs are and how that has to be part of that plan, just like those examples we just heard. Sure.
Thanks, Craig. So we'll just finish up with this quote that Maggie found for us. When we only look at behaviour, we stop seeing the child and only look with an intent to judge whether we need to reward or punish. When we look behind the behaviour, we see that struggling little human, our little human, who needs our help with something. I think that kind of nicely sums up the theme of what we've spoken about today. So, look, for the last part of today, we just wanted to talk a bit about where to from here. So this might have been enough for you and you might be happy to go off and it's all going to be good. But for a lot of families, we know there's a need for some kind of ongoing support in the long term, especially for those of us who where we're not in a situation that we're going to fix the behaviour, but the behaviour is possibly going to re-emerge at different times as people's needs change or during transition periods or when there's periods of external anxiety causing stuff that happens. So there's a bit of a map there of some of the things that we've been looking at that seem to work. And the first one in the middle is around this idea of family leadership, that we're not just recipients of services when we're families, but we need to be equal partners, that we've got particular knowledge of our needs and of our family members, and it's really, really important, not only that that's heard, but we're having some influence over the types of services that we receive. Because I think what we see around the state and also around the country is there are very few services which are supporting families experiencing challenging behaviour well. Mostly what we're seeing is that people are isolated and sometimes that really difficult situations are going on for years. So part of what we've been doing is this Understanding Behaviour workshop. So this is hosted by Developmental Disability WA, and the plan is for this workshop to continue into the future as people are interested in it. We're focusing on more learning for families, so I'll talk a minute about Is There a Better Way, which is 3 days of workshops which goes into more depth around, understanding why people behave in challenging ways and what sorts of things we might do about that. We have Side by Side, which is family-to-family support. So when we're alone, which many families end up by themselves, that there's someone for you to call, to talk to, that gets it, that's not going to judge you. That's sometimes very, very important. We've also got a Facebook page where everyone kind of connects all of the time as well. Ongoing learning around all of these unmet needs that are common, so communication and sensory needs and so forth, is really important. But that need from families is only going to be met if we're getting together and asking for it. And lastly, systemic advocacy. So trying to build a collective of families around the state so we've got some kind of voice so that we can have some more influence over systems and the kinds of supports that we get. That's going to become increasingly important as the new funding systems come in. So if you're going to be in My Way or NDIS, that kind of thing, I think we're going to need to be quite strong as a group of families in terms of having a voice and asking for what we need. So I'll get Bron and the girls to talk about, ladies, Side by Side. We're a wee bit short of time, so just a short, yeah.
Be quick, I'm always quick. So, Side by Side is a family peer partner program, and basically we are building communities of support around people and families who are experiencing challenging behaviour. That's the only prerequisite. Normally you get kicked off the bus or, you're not allowed to go to school or any of the support services, but for our program you have to have challenging behaviour. It's a strength-based approach, so we recognise that all families have strengths, just sometimes it's a little hard to figure out what they are. All the family partners who provide support have lived experience of challenging behaviour, and we've recognised they've got skills and capabilities that they want to contribute to other families. And quite often people who are wanting support, within 20 minutes of having a conversation to them, I realise that they could probably be a family partner too when stuff's going okay for them. So it's really a relationship-based model of support, and it's reciprocal. And Jodie and Maggie in Mandarin, they started out 4 years ago with us, and hopefully it is that when people feel support they can then be strong enough to provide it to other families as well. We do try and match people geographically, but if that doesn't work, then quite often we can just do phone or the Facebook page or email or whatever. Most people come to us maybe for a specific issue, so maybe they're struggling with school or a support service or something. Sometimes it's just about having somebody at the other end of the phone who understands and who gets it when you're having a pretty crappy day. And so there's some really long-lasting friendships that have come out of Side by Side. And I think that's it in a snapshot, because I have to be quick. So I think I'll just ask Jodie and Maggie if they want to have a little blurb about what they feel about it.
For me, which was really enticing was just the only criteria being challenging behaviour. Ayana hasn't got a typical label or anything, and she's definitely got loads of challenging behaviour. So that was really great, just to be around people and have a sense of belonging and I can fit in. I really love just connecting with families. You can have a really open and honest conversation with families that are going through it, and I find, we build that trust a lot quicker than that I have done in the past with some professionals. And it's genuine support and gives genuine hope, which is, just really nice, and just to know you're not out there alone is really great.
So Jodie was my family partner because I felt really lost, and so with her support our family is doing much better, and we have learned so much. We bounce ideas off of each other, we talk about what's worked, what hasn't worked, how do we go about finding service providers or funding or just anything you can think of, and it's really inspirational to be around another family who gets it, and it's also wonderful to feel that support and be able to support another family. So now Jodie and I will support families in the same situation where they have lost hope, but there is always hope, and it's just it's great to give back.
Thank you. So the other thing that we've been doing is there a better way? And this was designed by families, for families, and it's presented by families. This series of workshops was originally designed and is still to help professionals and families to get on the same page. So the idea is that if you come along, you can bring your teacher, education assistant, social worker, support worker, anyone that you'd like to bring along with you, so you can do the workshops together, and the purpose of them is to get everyone on the same page. So they tend to be, families' feedback is that they're really helpful in terms of figuring out, building their own capacity to respond to behaviour and figure out what's going on for a person. Just really quickly, we've kind of divided them into 3 individual days, because it's often hard for people to come to 3 days of workshops all at once. The first one's about communication and relationships, and you'll understand now why that's so important. The second day's about education and learning, so not just in school, but ways of thinking about learning and how that might play out if you're taking a positive behaviour support kind of approach. And the third day is about family leadership. So we do ask that you've done day 1 or 2 before you come along to day 3, because day 3 is about really learning more about the natural authority of families and how we as families can be leaders, not just in our own families, but also in our communities and with services. So that's, is there a better way in a nutshell? I guess the thing that we would say is that it's a bit of a tricky time in the disability sector because of the changing funding. So Side by Side is only funded until the end of the year, and we don't know what's going to happen after that. But we did want to share that with you to say if there was interest in that kind of approach, we've developed a manual, and we've certainly got the ability, even if we do end up finishing, which we hope we don't, we hope we find a way to keep going, to share that knowledge with people. So if people want to start groups for families experiencing challenging behaviour, we can absolutely provide coaching and some understanding about how you do that to be effective, because there's a bit of work goes into creating, a healthy culture in a group and a family-led kind of approach to things. Is there a better way? For now is pretty safe. So we're doing that in a partnership between Microboards Australia and Developmental Disability WA. So if you were interested in going to Is There a Better Way in your local area, you could let Mary know about that. And also just to let Mary and DDWA know about any ideas that you have that you think would be helpful for you, because they're an awesome organisation devoted to systemic advocacy for families. So they've done some great stuff for us already, for example, around dental and medical care, holding some forums and raising awareness around the needs for people experiencing challenging behaviour. So they're a good bunch of folks to be connecting with.